Hello again. As you guys may or may not know, I am Eli the Computer Guy. And today we're going to be talking about hobbies for geeks. And no, I do not mean stamp collecting. So we're going to be doing this video in the RV, in the travel trailer again, because people are zipping around outside on their little motor boats and that type of thing, so it's a little loud. So I decided to come in here to do this video. And I do have to say, I kind of like the lighting in this environment. So we're inside the travel trailer right now. I have my little light above me. And this just kind of, I don't know, there's something very noir about this, very cool. I feel like I should have it like a stogie. Let me tell you about the secrets of this field, right? But then smoking is bad for your health, and I don't do it. But anyways, that has nothing to do with anything, I suppose. So I want to talk about hobbies today, because this is one thing that keeps coming up with me as I go around and I talk with different people in the business world. And it's one of those things that I find very frustrating, and it's one of those things, as I say, I just really don't grasp what normal people are thinking. And obviously, most of the time, they don't grasp what I'm thinking either. So recently, I did a Silicon trailer, a little meeting with somebody that came all the way here to the Adirondacks. They drove like 4 hours to come here. They stayed in a hotel that night. The night before, then they came and they met me for like an hour and 45 minutes and then drove back. So they were willing to come that far. And so we were sitting there talking, we were discussing all these things. And then at the end of it, the guy looked at me and said, Eli, I just don't understand. I don't understand what you get out of this. And I looked at him and I said, well, you drove like 4 hours to see me. And he's like, yeah, one way. And I said, well, and you stayed at a hotel last night just to be able to meet with me today. Yeah. And I looked at him and I said, well, that's valuable. There's real money there. And they said, yeah, but I don't understand how there's real money there. And then I looked at him and was like, how do I explain to somebody the actual value in what I'm doing if I'm not obviously billing for what I'm doing? And I realized that this is a major disconnect, especially in the world of technology and in business. The idea that everything you do to make money should equal a paycheck or some kind of invoice at the end of it. And that's not really how the technology world works. And if you can start to think, again, if you can start to think about your technology career and your technology business in a slightly different way, you'll end up actually being more successful and making more money, but you won't be doing it in the normal way. And so that's what I kind of want to explain to you guys today, and explain to you guys about hobbies. Hobbies, mainly the IRS definition of hobbies, but hobbies nonetheless. So let's talk about what you are really trying to do when you start your technology business. Whether you're starting a startup company, you're going to be a founder and change the world, or you're just going to start a computer repair. No, don't start a computer repair shop. A web design shop. Maybe you're going to start a web design shop. Let's talk about what you're really trying to do here. So what you're really trying to do when you start your technology venture is the first thing that you need to do is you need to find a problem that needs to be solved. You need to find a solution to a problem that people care about, right? Because that's really what we are doing at the end of the day. We are solving problems. So if people need to get on the internet and a virus has wiped out their computer, we're not really cleaning out a virus, really, as far as the end user is concerned. What we're really doing is reconnecting them to the internet. We are getting them back on the internet. We happen to do that by using antivirus software, right? We don't really build websites. I mean, that's what we technically do. But what we're really doing is we're providing an advertising medium for a company. So a company needs to be able to communicate with their customers more effectively. That is the problem that we're trying to solve for. The company cannot communicate with their customers effectively enough. So what we do is we build a website so that the company can communicate better. That is what we're looking for. So the first thing that we have to find is we have to find a solution to a problem. So we go out there and we try to figure out what problems are there, and then what can we solve? What ideas do we have to solve those problems? The next thing that we have to think about is what are we willing to do day in and day out? Again, this is a big problem that I find with startup founders and people that try to get into the technology world, is they look at all the cool stuff, they look at all the sexy stuff, they look at all the amazing stuff, they look at training and certifications, they look at getting funding by Y Combinator, they look at all of this stuff, right? But the one thing that they don't focus on is the grind. What are you willing to do day in, day out? Again, if you look at Eli the Computer Guy LLC, if you look at what I am doing right now, the idea for this is, hey, why don't I sit down in front of a video camera and talk about real topics in technology and business? That's the idea. Well, that sounds cool, and that sounds sexy, and that sounds amazing. But then there's the reality of then sitting down and pumping out 1,000 videos, right? Everybody focuses on the idea. The idea is awesome. Yeah, but do you really want to sit down and actually churn through and do the product? Do you want to sit in front of a video camera? Do you want to sit in front of a keyboard and monitor and code all day? Do you actually want to do you actually want to solve the problem day in, day out? Just because you know a problem, I guess because you know the solution to a problem, does not mean you want to solve that problem 1,000 times. And that's one of the issues that I see with a lot of people that get into technology business, is they want to solve the problem once, they want to solve the problem twice, they don't want to solve the problem 2,000 times, right? So then you have to find, you have to find a solution to a problem. Then you have to make sure that you actually want to solve that problem again and again and again and again, iterate through and through and through and through and through. And then the next thing you have to do is you have to figure out if anybody wants you to solve that problem. Right? This is one of the big issues we get into in technology and business, is you know what the problem is, you even want to solve the problem. You're like, I really like doing this, but for whatever reason, nobody cares about you. You see this a lot in YouTube. Again, I've talked about a lot of other YouTube content creators, and some people think I'm being snarky, and I'm really not. I'm just, it's an example of how this works in the real world, where if you go out and you look at other YouTube content creators, they have created a lot of content. They've spent years and years and years creating content. When I watch their content, I look at their content and I go, you know, that seems pretty good. That seems like pretty decent content to me. So for me, I'm thinking, you know, these people should be successful. And yet, if you look at their actual stats, again, their total number of subscribers after almost 10 years is what I get in a single month. So for whatever reason, they know they want to do something. They know the problem they want to solve. They are willing to do it again and again and again and again. But for whatever reason, nobody cares, right? Nobody, they just look at that and they're like, yeah, I don't trust you to buy that from you. So you get into this a lot, especially, like I say, in the technology world, where let's say you want to do in-person training. You know, you're really excited to teach people how to do computer repair or web app design or something like that, but then nobody wants to come to your class. Maybe it's because you have a weird accent. You know, whenever you talk to people, the accent is something. You see this like a lot of the English as a second language people. You know, basically your accent is such that people don't understand what you're talking about. So you know the problem. I want to teach people how to fix computers or build web design, build websites. You know you want to do it, but then when you actually go out to do it, nobody wants to have that done from you, right? You know, there's a lot of different things like this. Let's say you have a criminal record, right? So you say, you know, I want to go in and I want to do computer security. So I know what the problem is. I'm going to create the computers are insecure. I'm willing to go through all the steps to secure people's computers 1,000 times over, but you have a felony record. So when you go to actually get a job or actually do any work for clients, they go, oh, you have a felony record. We can't allow you to do the security work. Right, there's all kinds of things like that. So you have to find a problem to solve, and you have to figure out the solution. You have to figure out whether or not you really want to iterate that. You don't want to do that again and again and again and again and again and again. And I'm telling you guys, a lot of you guys don't. You want to do it 1 time or 5 times or 10 times or 20 times. But when you get to the 200th time, you're just going to be banging your head against the wall because you really hate doing it. So you have to figure out something you want to do again and again and again and again. And then you have to see if people actually want you to do it. And these are questions that you can't answer until you actually go out there and play, until you actually go out there and try to do whatever it is you want to do. Again, whether it's computer repair or app development or YouTube content creation or teaching people, right? You don't know the answers to these questions until you go out there. So the problem that I see, again, in this the modern world, everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. Eli, I want to be an entrepreneur. Maybe. One of the things you find out is once you start being an entrepreneur, some people really like being an entrepreneur and other people don't, right? But everybody, you know, as soon as they get their stupid ass little idea, as soon as they have their stupid ass little idea, they say, this is what I want to do. This is my business. This is my startup company. And then the problem at that point is then they start doing all this work to make that company or that startup legitimate, right? So if you're going to be going out there and you're going to be charging people, you know, some kind of, you know, for products sold or services, you may have to get something like a sales tax number. So you have to get the sales tax number. Then if you're going to be bringing money in and sending money out, you have to deal with QuickBooks and all that. You have to get an FEIN number. You have to get a bank account number. There's all this basic stuff that'll take you about a day to do and only cost you sub $500. Now, if you really think you're going to be cool, you know, this is a real business, then you even have to go out and get an LLC, which is going to cost you about $300. That's even more work. Then there's like trademark and copyright and all that kind of stuff. Realistically, you can get up to about $1,000 in this stupid little crappy paperwork stuff, right? And then you think, well, if I'm going to be doing this business, then it's got to be real. So I've got to do a website. So then you have to build the website. Then you got to get business cards. You've got to design and buy all the business cards. Then beyond that, then you have to think, since you're going to be bringing in money from this venture, then you have to worry about things like liability concerns. You know, do you have to get general liability insurance or errors and omissions insurance and all this other stuff, right? There's all this stuff that goes into creating a business that if from step one you decide what you're going to do is a business, you have to do this. And you don't even know at that point if you really want to do the work or if anybody wants you to do the work, what the market's like or anything like that, right? You've got all of this effort. You've got all this stuff that you have to do and you don't even know if anybody cares, right? And that's one of the big things, right? With a technology business, one of the things that you have to be thinking about is where we make the money, where we make the outsized income. So outsized income means we make more than it seems like we should. Is a very nice way to make money, right? The reason we make an outsized income is because we target niches that nobody else is targeting, right? You know, that's why I've done so well on YouTube, is because I do long-form technology content. Nobody else does it. Even to this point, I still don't know why, but they don't. So I found that niche. And because I found that niche, and because I am willing to do this, and because you guys want to see me do this, I make a very good living. I am very, very successful at it. But that is a very specific niche, right? In order to find this niche, I had to go through and I had to play with other things. So at one point, I was going to do in-person training. I did a few in-person training classes. So back when I owned my own building, from the old days of doing the consulting company, I decided, well, I own my own building anyway. I have to pay the insurance anyway. Maybe I'll start doing in-person classes. And it was really nice. I could very easily get $250 per head per day, get a nice number of people in the class, you know, $1,000, $2,000 to teach a class in computer repair, web design, whatever. And then I sat down and I realized I really hated repeating myself. You know what I'm saying? Like, I like doing these videos because I can sit here and I can talk to you guys, I can teach whatever I want to teach, and then I never do this again, right? Basically, more or less, I never do this again. What I didn't like with in-person classes is that I would sit down and there was money, so I knew the problem to solve. People wanted me to solve the problem, but I didn't want to iterate on that, right? And so that's one of the problems, is you go into this and you spend all this money, you take all this time, you take all this energy, but you don't even know if this is something that you are actually, you know, are people going to want you to do it? Are you going to want to continue to do it? So on and so forth. So one of the things to be thinking about is to think about starting your projects as hobbies versus actual startup companies or technology companies, right? Go out there and see if anybody cares about what you're doing before you go out there and try to actually make any money from it. So that's where I'm looking at. So Geek Camp is coming up, right? So hopefully we're going to do Geek Camp, and hopefully Geek Camp will be awesome. So Geek Camp is this whole idea of we're going to go into an RV park or, you know, one of these camping facilities. I'm going to say that I'm going to say that I'll be there. You guys can come in. You can get little tent spaces. You can get RV spaces. You can get cabin or apartment spaces, whatever they have available. We can meet during the day. We can chat. We can talk about all of your problems. You can go off and try to fix your problems. At the end of the day, we re-meet again. Hopefully it should be really cool, right? Hopefully it should be really cool. Now I want to walk you through something. So if I decided to make this a business from the get-go, right? If I decided Geek Camp is the greatest thing in the world, which I think it may be, but if I decided, yes, this is what I want to do, this is going to be successful, this is going to be awesome, blah, blah, blah. Think about all the things that I would have to do to make it official. So the first thing I'd have to do is make it its own LLC, maybe bring it under Eli the Computer Guy, but whatever. I'd have to make it legally official somehow. Not only would I have to make it legally official, but if I am going to be running this as a for-profit venture, then I have to make sure I have general liability insurance. If I'm going to have somewhere between 10 to 50 people show up, I don't know, probably $1 million isn't going to be good enough. Probably $2 to $3 million in general liability insurance for something like this is $2,000 to $3,000 a year, at least. So that would cost me money. Not only that, but if it's going to be official, things like I'd have to come up with contracts and forms for you guys to sign, again, to release me from liability and all this other kind of stuff. Beyond that, we'd have to come up with policies for how all you guys act to each other. Then, on top of that, if I try to come to you guys for help, so like one of the things I'd like to do with Geek Camp is actually have quote unquote positions. So there's like the idea I have is there the ambassador position, the instructor position, and then the logistics position. And so the idea with the Geek Camp, again, what I'm trying to do with all these projects is do something that hopefully will allow you to put something like on your resume or at least make you feel better. So like the ambassador position, the idea is if we want to go to a field trip or if we want to go talk or interview with somebody, the ambassadors would go and they would set that up. So if we're in Seattle and I say, hey, does everybody here want to do a tour of a data center? And people are like, yeah, it'd be great. I would go to the ambassador and say, hey, ambassador, start calling up data centers and get us a field trip of one. And then that person would go off and they would do that. And the valuable thing there is, one, they get to say they're an ambassador. And then two, they actually get to communicate with all these data centers. I mean, you actually, hey, yes, I'm working with Eli the Computer Guy over here, and we'd like to bring in, 10 or 15 people to do a field trip of your data center, right? That makes you seem official, and you get to meet all those people. And then you have instructor level and logistics. That's a whole different thing. But talk about at a different video. But the thing is, and so this is something hopefully you can put on your resume, so on and so forth. Well, here's the issue, right? If this is a for-profit company, right? If I'm making money, bringing in sponsorship, or you guys are paying me or anything like that, guess what? And now I have to worry about IRS rules for employees. Because you can put people under volunteer, especially if you're a 501c3, it's easy. But if you're actually bringing money in for a company, you've got to worry, again, about wage laws. Is this person how do you know they're an employee? How do you know if they're a contractor? How do you know if you can actually have them as a volunteer? Even if they're things like volunteers and all that, do you have to get workman's comp insurance? Beyond workman's comp insurance, that general liability insurance we were talking about before, do we have to put that on top of them? So if I go in, and this is just a hobby. Basically, if I say, hey, you guys can just come to the campsite that I'm at. You can pay the campsite. I don't get any kickback. Then we can just come and we can just do it, right? We can just do Geek Camp. There's no liability because I'm not getting paid for this. This is, I'm at a campsite. You're at a campsite. You come over and talk to me during the day, and that's it, right? If we give people these little positions, there's no money coming in to the company, to the organization. So it's obviously not a for-profit company, so I don't have to worry about IRS rules and all that kind of stuff. Same is true with liability concerns and all those kinds of things. And so that's the thing to be thinking about whenever you're going to be starting any of these projects of yours, is if you start it from the get-go as a business, there's all this stuff you have to worry about. And it's real. I've gotten little IRS fines before, and they're not actually little. I screwed up one paycheck for one employee, I screwed up submitting his taxes for like one quarter or whatever, and it was like a $400 fine just for that one thing. So that's what you have to worry about if you start it as a business. On the other hand, if you start it just as a hobby, and then see what happens. Then you don't have to worry about all that outlay, all that initial expense, all that kind of stuff. So if we go out, right, so we're going to do, Geek Camp, we're going to start this thing in Seattle, and we're going to go out, and maybe the first time 3 people show up. And hey, an entire month, 3 people show up. Okay, that's cool. And then the next time we do it and we're down in San Francisco, maybe 20 people show up. And then the next time we do it, I don't know, it's outside of Austin or something, and 100 people show up. Well, here's the thing. At some point, there's going to be a number where it's like, now it would actually be worthwhile to try to turn this into a company or a 501c. If I have 100 people showing up for this thing, that is a viable venture. If I have 3 people showing up for this thing, that is not a viable venture, right? So if I start this off as a hobby, I don't have to outlay all that expense. I don't have to worry about all the legal issues. I don't have to worry about all that kind of stuff. Until the point where I see that it is in fact viable, then I can lay out all the money or ask for investment or any of that kind of stuff because I already know the numbers. Right, again, especially this is the whole thing like with the whole startup world, right? Everybody in the startup world, they just want to pull an idea out of their ass and get $1 million in funding. Well, imagine if you went to the venture capitalist and you said, "Hey, I'm already running this thing as a hobby, and I already have 100 or 200 or however many people showing up to this thing. They're already there. We already know how much money that's worth to sponsors and all that kind of stuff. So all I need is the investment to get all the lawyers' fees and this and that and the other thing, and then we're rocking and rolling." This is something to be thinking about, because that's the problem that I see with so many of the professionals is everything they do, they want that one thing to directly lead to a paycheck. I am going to do a meetup and I expect to get $10 per head at the meetup and then I will make money. I'm going to do this and I expect to make money. I'm going to do that. What they don't look at is all that initial outlay, all that initial time, all that initial energy, all that initial on something that may utterly, completely fail. Wouldn't it be better to start it as a hobby, to start it as something that's not making money, get to the point where it is making, or get to the point where it is viable, and then switch it over to making money at that point? Again, like my buddy who does Tech Breakfast, Ron, right? He started Tech Breakfast originally as his own little project. It was an advertising expense for him for his other startup company. Hey, I just want to get some other computer geeks together to talk about how they're creating web apps, discuss front end design and all that kind of stuff. And the first time he did it, he got like 5 people, and the next time he did it, he got 10 people, and then he got 25 people, and he got 50 people, and then he got 150 people. And then at 150 people, it's one of those where I remember sitting there and talking with him, being like, you should be able to get sponsors for this. And he's like, yeah, we probably should be able to get sponsors for this. And then he got 1 sponsor, then 2 sponsors, then 3 sponsors, and then it grew. And then at that point, then once he got enough sponsors, then he flipped it over to actually turning it into a business. But originally, it just started as a side thing. He bought, a crap ton of Panera coffee and Panera bagels, brought it in. We all did this thing once a month. Didn't worry about it until it got to a size where he realized that this was actually a valuable thing to do. So this is something for you guys to be thinking about, is don't think about turning everything you do into a business or into a startup right away. Go out there and experiment. Go out there and play. Again, when I talk about Silicon Trailer, so this whole idea with Silicon Trailer where I go out and I meet the viewers, so I answer your questions in real life. We talk about your business issues, your professional issues, all that kind of stuff. When I first started, the idea I had for Silicon Trailer, really, I figured 1 or 2 people per month would be interested in it. I really did. I didn't really think many people would take advantage of it. I was like, well, I do this, maybe 1 person a month shows up, 2 people a month show up. I get to meet people who actually watch my content. I get an idea of what they're like. I get an idea of what their problems are. They get, some advice from me. Yeah, that shouldn't be too bad, right? So the initial idea is, again, 1 or 2 people a month. And now everywhere I go, It's at least 2 people who want to see me. And again, in the New York area, apparently I'm really popular. they're just pouring in, right? Rhinebeck, New York, I had like 8 people who wanted to see me. And, I still get emails. And so that's the thing, you just throw this idea out there, and then you see if people are interested in it. And then if people actually are interested in it, then you get to start thinking, okay, how can I make money off of this? Can I charge admission? Can I charge sponsors? How do I tweak this? But you do that after you see that it's going to be viable. And the other thing you have to be thinking about, again, with any of these projects or any of these businesses you're going to do, the biggest problem that you're going to run into, is client acquisition and client acquisition cost. And this is one of those things that not enough people talk about, and I don't understand why. And what client acquisition cost is how much is it going to cost you to acquire each client? So every single person that comes into you, how much is it going to cost? How much money is it going to cost, and how much time is it going to cost? Again, as I talked about in the past, going out there and knocking on doors and handing out flyers, paying AdWords. When I had a computer repair business and I paid for AdWords, it was like $85 per user, per client, for new client acquisition, right? So one of the issues that you run into is if you start your venture as a business or as a startup from the get-go, and you go out there and you're trying to acquire clients that are actually going to be paying you or actually going to be giving you something. The issue is then they start thinking, is it really worth it to them? So that's one of the things. Like I was sitting there and I've talked with a couple of people about this with Silicon Trailer. And I've talked about how much I should charge if I was going to charge for doing Silicon Trailer. And realistically, if I was going to charge for doing these meetings, it would be a minimum of $250. The reasonable street value of what I'm doing, sitting there for an hour to 3 hours with people, is worth at least $250, right? But one of the issues with that is that as soon as I start charging people $250, then it starts to become a decision of, do they really want to do this or not? Well, one of the things you have to be thinking about whenever you're going to be starting your venture, whenever you're going to be starting your projects and turning into a business or a startup, your hobby, is you have to deal with your clients first to figure out what they actually want and to figure out how the flow of whatever product or service that you're offering is going to be, right? So if you're going to be selling computers, the question is how do you sell computers? Do people come to you? Do they call you up on the phone? How does this process work? So when I sit down and I do Silicon Trailer, one of the questions that I had for myself is, how does this work? Are people going to show up on time? How long are people going to want for appointments? What are we going to discuss, right? When I first started this, I had no idea what the answer to any of those questions were. So the issue is, if I start trying to charge money right off the bat, 2 things happen. One, people decide that they don't want to do it because they don't want to spend that much money. And 2, once you start charging money, people start coming in with their own expectations. And since you don't know how it's going to go, you're not really sure if those expectations match reality. And so you start to run into a lot of problems. So if you start something as a hobby and you're not charging in the very beginning, you get to see how things work out. You get to see, what do clients actually want? You get to see what are their actual needs. What are you willing to provide for them? How are things going well? How are things going poorly? And how do you get to tweak it, right? If you try to go for the money from the very beginning, you already start running into a lot of issues. And again, it's not really worth it. I mean, giving away 10 or 20 or 50 free appointments, will give you a lot of information about what people actually want, so that when you do flip over to decide to charge for it in the future, you know how much you should charge, you know what people are looking for, you know how to set expectations, so on and so forth. So that's some idea there for the whole idea of starting your little tech venture, whatever, as a hobby. And again, as I say, this is one of those things that I don't see enough people doing, because again, I talk to you guys a lot about this in all of these videos. Here's the thing, guys, here's the thing. When you find real problems to solve, that you're willing to solve and that people want you to solve, money follows. Money is easy. I know, like, I talk to you guys about this and people are like, oh, you're just arrogant or egotistical. But I'm telling you, again, my peer group is business owners. Money, If you're solving problems that people want solved and you can do it again and again and again, I mean, that is the essence of business. That's what people get paid for. The reason most people don't make a lot of money in business and in life is because they're solving problems that people don't really care about, or they're solving problems that people care about, but they don't want to do it very much, right? You know, the person who repairs 10 computers per day is going to make a crap ton more money than the person that repairs 2 computers per day, right? Both people are solving the same problem, but one person really wants to repair computers, the other doesn't. And again, or, you know, the whole thing, you know, you're trying to solve problems, but people, for whatever reason, don't want you to solve the problem. If you go out there and you find where you fit and you find the problem, you're willing to just iterate 1,000 times, people want you to do it, the money will follow afterwards. So think about that when you're going out there. Instead of trying to start these businesses from the get-go, just start with a hobby. Just start playing around. Because again, the issue that I see, one of the issues that I see is the idea. Coming up with ideas is fun. Coming up with business cards is fun. Coming up with websites is fun. Talking about business and startup life is fun, right? It really is fun. Hey, we could do this, and we could do this, and we could do this, and hey, look, these business cards we design. You know, all of that stuff is really, really, really fun, but it doesn't actually get you paid. Nobody is going to pay you simply because you have a really nice business card. So the problem is with a lot of things is people focus on all this fluff, all this just crap that doesn't really matter. They don't focus on the actual product itself. They don't focus on what they're going to be providing. And so they spend $1,000, $2,000, and I've seen this. I've seen other consultants. They spend $5,000 on all this fluff and all this crap, and then they completely and utterly fail because they didn't go out there and just start to do it simply. Just go out there and see. Do people want what you're willing to offer? And go from there. Go from there. So that would be my thought today on the whole idea of, you know, the technology world and hobbies is go out there and play. Don't expect everything that you do to lead to a paycheck. Just go out there, play, see what happens, see what people are interested in, and you may be surprised with what you find. Again, that's where, you know, like I said, I've played around with the whole startup world. I sit down, I've talked with a lot of people. I've done a lot of zillion free consultations. I've spent a lot of time, a lot of energy, because each one of those consultations, every time I'm talking with somebody, there's a little bit of information to be gathered, right? If I charged, then the chances are I wouldn't talk to as many people because I'd have to go through this whole client acquisition process. But just because I sit down and talk with people, I can see what's going on here, I can see what's going on here, I can see what you're interested in and what you are willing to pay for and this and that and the other thing. And then you take all of that and you turn it into something that is hopefully valuable, and you go from there. Instead of trying to make money from the absolute get-go. So there you go. There you go. That is my thought on hobby. I hope that makes sense. It's one of those whenever I sit down here and I talk directly into the camera sometimes, I don't have any notes anymore. It's like, I hope I went through all my points. I think I went through all of my points there. But just, like I said, just think about that. We see that a lot with hacker spaces, like in Baltimore, in the Baltimore area. They have these things called hacker spaces. These aren't accelerators, they're not incubators, they're hacker spaces. And what they are is like a lot of these techs. So they work at big enterprise companies. They have real jobs, but they like to play with things on the side. So now, especially like with the Internet of Things, people are playing with Arduino boards, and people are playing with Raspberry Pis and all that kind of stuff. So that's one of the things that a lot of these professionals are doing is they'll get 5 or 6 or 10 people together. They all chip in, let's say $200 per month. They all chip in $200 per month, and then they rent out a little industrial space, right? And then in that industrial space, they bring in all of their different tools so they can play around. And so they do this as a hobby. But think about this, right? Their hobby. So they pay their $200 plus the utility bills or whatever. They go there and they play around with Arduino boards and they figure out how to make, you know, drones do weird stuff, and they do all kinds of other wacky stuff, right? As a hobby. But all the stuff that they're learning there, all the stuff that they're playing around with, all the stuff that they're screwing around with, that is still valuable skills that they can then take back to their employer and go, hey, look, I learned how to make an Arduino do whatever. I think I should get paid another $10,000 a year. Right? And so again, that's where don't think about everything. Remember, we get paid in the technology profession, for solving problems. So a lot of people, the problem that they run into is, since they're always looking for paychecks, they're always looking for their employers or somebody above them to tell them what to do, is they just sit there and they wait and they say, okay, I'm going to get a pay raise just as soon as my boss sends me through the MCSE class. But that's not really how it works in the real world, right? You need to go out there, you need to play, you need to experiment, you need to do hobby, you need to do things that aren't going to directly pay you, and then you'll be surprised by learning those things. You can then turn around and then, again, like I say, turn it into a business or a startup, or simply get a pay raise or something like that. So there we go. Hobbies in the technology world, in all seriousness. Because again, like I say, I mean, like looking at Geek Camp, right? Yeah, Geek Camp, I think, is a really cool idea. I really do. I think it could make money. Because again, like I have friends. I have friends who do events. I have friends who do events, and so I was talking with the guys. There's this group, technically they do Technically Baltimore and Technically Philadelphia and like Technically New York. They're they're like a web magazine or whatever for the local startup scene in these different areas. And so one of the ways that they pay the bills is by doing events. And so, I was talking with them, and they did an event a while ago in Baltimore. And to give you an idea, like the money involved, is that for this small event, so there were like 25 to 30 attendees, and it was a talk on like colleges and universities and design or whatever, right? Basically, for this, getting 25 to 30 people to show up in this startup company to have this little presentation, they got paid $5,000. So that's the thing, is I know in the event space, if I can figure out how to create an event that people want to come to, that I'm willing to do, that there's a lot of money there. But again, the issue is it's too easy to start focusing on that money and be like, okay, Geek Camp has to make an amount of money, and so I'm going to start this as a business, and then again, I've got to do liability, and I've got to do all of these other things. Instead of, let's focus on just having fun. You know what? In the beginning, and maybe forever, Geek Camp will just be a fun idea. We're just going to go and we're going to see who the hell shows up, and we're not going to worry about liability insurance because it's not a structured thing. And we're not going to worry about IRS because, again, it's not a business. We're not going to worry about all that. We're just going to go and we're going to have fun. And again, if 5 people show up, cool. Then it's fun. It's a hobby. If 10 people show up, well, that's interesting. If 50 people show up, well, then we know that we actually have something and can go from there. I'm very excited about Geek Camp. I do think it'll be really fun. But anyways, that is my thought today on hobbies in the technology world. Really, 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 really take this seriously, because so many people, they just focus on that money, and then, they don't really get how all this works in the end. So think about that. Start it off as a hobby. Just start it off. Just go out there. Take whatever money people will offer you. Just take it as a little hobby. See what the hell happens. If you have something that works, if you have something that people want, again, you'll make all the money up at the end of the day anyway.